Hey students, it's Mr. Hay, and I'm just going to go over our lesson about editing our digital photography. If I go into my recents, you can see in my camera roll I have my photos here, and this is the part where I want to choose which photos I want to keep. And I have already gone through and made those decisions, so I'm going to hit select, and the photos that I want to keep in order to edit them to turn in for the assignment are these here. And I've already taken the time to preview these and make these choices. So once you have selected the photos that you intend to edit, and they're checkmarked, on the upper left you're going to hit that share button and you're going to choose add to album, and then I'm going to choose new album, and I'm going to name the album so I know what unit or project it's for. This one is going to be called Intro to Digital Photo. Save. And now they are in the album. So now I'll go to albums, and I got Intro to Digital Photo, and those are my photos that I intend to edit. Okay, so now what I want to do is just open up one, and I'm going to choose Edit on the upper right, and I want to talk to you about editing. So on the left you have three choices. We have manual edit, we have auto edits, which we are going to not use, and then below that we have our cropping tool. So cropping is what you can use to straighten the image. If your image is slightly crooked, you can use these vertical and horizontal lines to line it up just right. You can also pinch in and out and then be able to recompose your image even using the rule of thirds that the cropping tool offers. When you have it how you like, you hit done if you want to crop it at all. Okay. Whoops, now I'm going to go back into edit and go into manual edit mode, and over here on the far right there are all kinds of different editing tools we can use, and what we want to do is keep the natural look of the photo, meaning we don't want it to look artificial. We don't want it to look like it's more like digital art, but I want to add pop to this photo, and I want to preserve the details in the light areas and the dark areas as much as possible. Okay, so let's just go to exposure. If I lower exposure on here, or if I raise it, I get a brighter flower, but my brights get washed out. You can see that's happening over here. That's too washed out. So I think my exposure is actually the best it's going to get. Maybe I could lower it a little bit. Okay. Alright. Next I've got brilliance, and this changes your overall brightness. And right now I'm going to adjust to get maybe the flower a little bit more brilliant, because I know I can make the shadows darker later on. Okay. About right there. Next, highlights. So if my highlights are too high, I can try to knock them down, but that affects my flower too much. So I kind of like the flower as it is, so I'll leave highlights alone. Now shadows, we can brighten shadows or we can darken shadows, and I'm going to darken my shadows a little bit, but I'm interested in preserving the detail. Like if I darken too much, do I lose too much? So I have to keep that in mind. But that adds more pop to the picture. Now if I just touch the picture, it shows me what it looks like originally for about 2 seconds. So that's the original, and that's how it got adjusted so far, and I think it's improving a lot. Next we have contrast. If I boost the contrast, it makes our brights brighter and our darks darker. If I lower the contrast, it flattens out the image a little bit. So what I like to do is, if I want to boost contrast, I'm going to go until I think it's too much. I think that's too much, so then I'm going to back off just a little bit. Next we have brightness. If I lower brightness, what happens? Oh, that's too much. Okay, raise it, see what happens. and just see, is it improving my photo at all? If not, leave it alone. Okay, your black point, when you turn down the black point, it makes your blacks more like grays. If you turn up your black point, it gives you more blacks. Now at this stage, I think it's looking too artificial. So I'm looking right in this area. If I like it how it is, I'll leave it alone. If I want to push it back into space a little bit, you see how that's working? But we lose detail. So how much detail is worth losing? Maybe that's a good compromise right there. Okay. And then next we have saturation, and then we have vibrance. I recommend adjusting vibrance. Saturation is overkill. It changes a lot, right? If I leave that at 0 and I try vibrance first, vibrance will let you add a little bit more color pop if you want it, or you can pull a little bit out if that's what you want. But vibrance, I think, is a more nuanced way to adjust color intensity. Then we have warmth. If you raise warmth up, it gives you more of a yellower orange tone. If you pull it out, it gives you more of a cooler purple bluish tone. So just experiment. I'm going to go a little warm right there. Then tint, it's kind of like purples and greens, you see? So you just got to see if it is improving your shot at all. I think I'm going to leave my tint alone. And then sharpness, let's look at it closely. Sharpness is set to 0. If you raise it up, it really tightens up your pixels, almost so it looks very artificial. So if we go back down to 0, how high can I go before it looks too contrived? I think that's a little overkill right there. So I'll back it off a little bit. I think that's okay. Next I have definition. This is sort of like nuances on contrast. You can see it gives us a little definition. I'm trying to get that flower to pop, which it already does, by the way. And then noise reduction, I don't need to worry about noise reduction, but if you were having any, see, when I zoom in close, that's what noise looks like. So if I did do that, you could see it sort of fuzzes it. There you go. See how it fuzzes it all out? It sort of blurs the noise. But if you do that too much, it makes my flower a little blurry too. But maybe, so that's 0, maybe a little bit of noise reduction can be pleasant to the eye. Depends on what we're trying to achieve. That's where you have to be an artist. Okay, next I'll go to vignette. In vignette, if I go down, it makes the outer parts brighter. If I go up, it makes the outer parts a little bit darker. And I'm going to do that because it sort of frames the composition better toward the focal point. Alright, let me go back up toward exposure and see if I think it's just a little too bright overall now, so exposure will help me. And then brilliance, no, I think we're okay on brilliance. Highlights, pull some of the highlights down. Okay. Shadows, contrast, brightness. Alright, so I was looking at all the bright light on the right and trying to decide if it's distracting or not. But I think this is as good as I'm going to get this photo. Maybe I could experiment with cropping it in a little closer and then getting some of that bright light out of there. Hit done. There we go. So I'm pretty happy with this picture, and that's editing. So now when I come back here, you can see that photo looks a lot better. Now if you wanted to try again, then what you could do is you could share this photo and then choose duplicate. And when I go back to the album, you can see that it's in there twice. And I can go back to the original I can go to edit, and then I can choose revert, which is on the upper right. Revert, revert to original, and that's the original photo. And I could try to edit it again or edit it differently if I wanted to crop it differently, or whatever I want. So just as a review, the goal is to add some additional pop, a little bit deeper darks, making sure you're getting the clarity that you want. Maybe you can pop the color a little bit. But the goal is to preserve details and not to have an artificial look. If you feel like it has an artificial look, like this one, I do think it's starting to have a little artificial look. Let me come back down the vibrance, and I'm going to pull some vibrance out just a little bit. It's too much. And I think there we go. I think it looks a little bit more normal that way. And now I think I'm satisfied with this picture. Okay, let me know if you have any questions, and happy editing.